So a lot of your research has had to do with end of life care, I guess. So focusing on that part of our culture specifically, what's the terrain these days in terms of, I guess, in the medical world or the kind of medicalization of death or an end of life?
Yeah, medicalization of death is obviously a really big thing. I think most of us, when we think about bad ways to die, we think about the ICU. We think about being sort of in an antiseptic, clinical, mechanical kind of situation in which we sort of have lost maybe functions, but we're tied up to machines, things like that. And I do think that happens and continues to happen. But there's a broader awareness within the medical sphere that that's not the way most people want to end their lives and not the context. And so I think there are more and more sort of off-ramps to take a step away from what we might call over-treatment. Daniel Callahan calls it the brinkmanship of dying. So this sort of traditionally, when it comes to treating people at the end of life, there's a sense that you want to do everything you possibly can, but you don't want to do too much. But nobody really knows where the line is. So you do this kind of risky behavior of trying to push the edge as much as possible. This typically as sort of a physician or caretaker, and sort of leaving it in the patient's hands when to say no. But then, of course, none of us knows when to say no. And when a doctor says we could do this, you say, well, okay, So it's really hard to sort of step away from that inertia and momentum that leads towards overtreatment still. But hospice and palliative care are huge areas of medicine that are continuing to grow. And I think one of the issues is trying to find ways to make sure that they're sort of properly remunerated and that there's, ways for that kind of medicine to be incentivized in our insurance schemes and, health, public policy, things like that. But yeah, I mean, when I talk to my students, the other sort of thing with the terrain, this is new to me, having just moved to Oregon, where death with dying and death with dignity, and aid in dying has been a legal practice for a very long time now, and is very much the way my students, for the most part, sort of assume things are and should be, and coming from a place in the country where that's not the case and it's not sort of legal, has been a really interesting sort of teaching opportunity for me, and to talk with my students about this in our ethics class has been really fun and eye-opening to me. But end of life processes of assisted suicide and aid in dying and euthanasia and those questions are very much on the table, I think, for a lot of people, because nobody wants to do the overtreatment thing. Nobody wants to medicalize death. And there's this assumption that, this is the only surefire way to avoid it. Of course, I don't think that that's true. Right. But